What's up, guys, and welcome back to episode 2 of our podcast. Still working on a name. Any suggestions, just drop it down in the comments. That would be great. Be sure to like and subscribe as well. But today we're going to be going over AFC East, a little recap. So, AFC East division consists of the Patriots, Dolphins, Bills, and Jets. So, we're going to go over that in today's video. And let's hop right into the first team. We have the New York Jets. The 2-14 New York Jets. So, what do we got to say about these guys? Obviously, not the year that they were expecting. Horrible start. They did get 2 wins, especially a big one against Baker Mayfield and that Cleveland Browns team that was shorthanded. But what are your thoughts on this Jets team this past season?
So I think a lot of people can agree that there's not a lot to be proud of if you're a Jets fan. And there's a couple reasons for this, in my opinion. I think the first, Adam Gase, I don't really think he was the answer. You really look at him and say, why is this man even a head coach of an NFL team? And, they did what they needed to do. They fired him when the season was over. And to be honest with you, I think those 2 wins at the end of the year against the Browns and the Rams, I think Gase was trying to keep his job because, I mean, Jets fans, they're saying like we won and still lost because we just handed the Jaguars Trevor Lawrence, which me and Pat were talking about before this. I personally, and I think Pat feels the same way. I don't think they should go to Trevor Lawrence. In my opinion, Sam Darnold's a pretty good quarterback. I think put him on a different team with a different system, and he's good. So I think now the fact that they're going to get a new head coach, and who knows who it's going to be, but I think that anyone is better than Adam Gase, in my opinion. So I think if you can get somebody good, you can progress this kid, and he can be a good quarterback. We saw what he did at USC. He's no joke. And basically, the Jets just they really weren't hot. There was nothing to really talk about with the Jets. I mean, the one thing I can tell you some stats for, I mean, the Jets were in the bottom 3 in the league in passing yards. So they averaged 174 passing yards a game, which, I mean, there's a couple reasons for this. Sam Donald was hurt a couple games. We saw Joe Flacco come in a couple games. So, I mean, when you have two quarterbacks, we talked about it yesterday, it's kind of hard to deal with when it comes to two different quarterbacks in a season. So I think, that doesn't really help out much. But just these teams, there's no really good player that you can see stand out much. I think the one bright spot on this team that they do have is, we were talking about it before, Mekhi Becton, the lineman that they drafted last year in the first round. I think that he is the bright spot. If you want to start a team and have a good offense, you've got to have a good offensive line. I think that this kid, he got hurt a couple of games. He just got hurt against the Patriots this week. So I think, you know, he has a lot to improve on, but I think that this is a good place for the Jets to start. You have Sam Darnold. I don't think you need another guy. Give him an offensive line, and you can work around that, and you can see this offense goes with a new head coach. So I think that the bright spot for the Jets this year is Mekhi Becton, and other than that, Jets really nothing much to brag about. Not really a good team this year. I think a lot of people know that, but that's what I would say.
Yeah, I'd say definitely the bright spot, or at least one of the best spots for the Jets. One of the best takeaways for them this season was that Sam Darnold, I feel like, is finally starting to develop. And yes, they struggled at the beginning of the season, obviously losing their first, I don't even know what it was, 11, 12 games. So
Something
obviously
like that.
not the way that they wanted to go, but they also did have, I believe, 4 other one-score games. So those could have went either way, and they put up a decent amount of points besides getting shut out against Miami in Week 6. But I think that Sam Darnold really has stuck with this team, and we don't see quarterbacks. For example, Josh Rosen, that are on bad teams. We don't see quarterbacks, tend to get better if they're on bad teams that just don't win. And I think a big reason why Josh Rosen didn't work out in the Cardinals was not only the coaching, but I think that he just wasn't a good fit for them, and they just couldn't win. And ultimately, I mean, that possibly could have ruined his career. We don't see Rosen on Sundays. for any team currently. So obviously that was a big blow to his career. But you look at these draft picks, and obviously the Jets have a lot of holes, but they pick up Mekhi Becton, like you talked about in that first round, which I think was huge. He had a really strong season, and I think they were just trying to get more time for Sam Darnold. This is a guy that can run out of the pocket, but one of those quarterbacks that just takes so many hits. I mean, this was a horrible offensive line. Um, you know, Going into this year, it got a little bit better. Jets have a lot of receivers that, you know, rely on speed instead of size. And I think, the fact that you bring in a guy like Mekhi back in and, making this O line better, I think it's just giving the receivers more time to get upfield. Sam Darnold more time to make a decision whether he wants to scramble or if he wants to huck it up the field. And another one of those guys that I thought made some pretty good plays that they picked up in the second round um, this year was Dontrell Mims, I believe his name is.
Denzel
Um,
Mims.
but the wide receiver, he had a pretty solid season for them, and I think he's just fits really good in with Crowder and those other Jets receivers. And I think that's another upside to this Jets team. But they do, I think, still need a lot of work. Just a struggling team, and we saw the Patriots struggle, who we'll talk about next. They really didn't have a good season, but I think that the Jets, it's only going to get worse if they don't um, start to make moves and really make this team better on the offensive side of the ball.
I agree with that. I agree with that. So, who would you say is your MVP for the Jets? Because guys, we're gonna be talking about the MVP for each team that we think, like Pat said at the beginning. So, what are you gonna go with?
I mean, there isn't a whole lot to choose from just because, there isn't a whole lot of skill, if you
Right.
will, on this team, at least at this point or this season. But I think I was most impressed with Sam Darnold, their quarterback. And just going back to that last point, like just the progression, like, being able to hang in there on an 0-12 team. And really, the Jets got unlucky. I mean, we saw a Monday night football game against the Patriots. They lost by a field goal. And I know Flacco started that game, but I mean, this Jets team was just hanging in, lost to the Bills by 8 points in week 7. I mean, and Donald also faced, I think it was COVID. And then did he also have an injury that he faced, or was it just COVID? You
Um,
know,
I don't remember, but
I
I
know he missed
do.
some time. He
He
missed
missed some
some time
time.
this
He missed some
season.
time. So
So
that's
obviously
why
that
Flacco was
hurt the
in there.
Jets. Yeah. So obviously that hurt the Jets. But I mean, just a strong finish to this season, I think. And, they do lose by 2 touchdowns in New England. But it was a good way for Cam Newton to go out, I think, for Patriots fans. And, they got that huge win against the Jets the Browns and the Rams.
Yep.
So I think it was a strong way for them to finish off their season. I think that this team's probably going to pick up at least 2, maybe 3 more wins in this year, next season, if they continue to get better and have a good draft, which we saw this year. So obviously, wasn't what Jets fans were hoping, but at least they didn't go 0-16. So that's what
Okay.
I will leave. What about you?
So for my MVP, I would just say, like, I like what you said about Darnold. I think he's good, but I think for me, I'm just gonna say Mekhi Becton just on that offensive line as a rookie. I think he had a good year. If he didn't get hurt, I think he would have had a better year. But I mean, I think this is a bright spot in the team. Like we said, he's there to protect Sam Darnold. He's there to help the run game. So I think that hopefully they can build off that offensive line. He can be the centerpiece of the offensive line for next year. So I think my MVP is going to be Becton here.
Okay, so let's move on. Staying in the AFC East, team that came in third, and me and Copel, we know this team, obviously. As Patriots fans, we know them real well. Um, Losing Tom Brady, I mean, probably the biggest blow that this team has ever suffered since that Eagles Super Bowl loss. But anyway, we'll just start off the season here in week 1. Great win at home, 10 points. Win by 10 points, the Pats over the Dolphins. And obviously, when your team starts 1-0, that just gives you even more confidence than you had coming into the year. Cam Newton looked really good, especially in this Sunday night game against the Seahawks when they lost by 5 points in the last play of the game. Newton got stopped at, I think it was the 1 yard line. I don't know. It was a heartbreaker of a loss. Um, but from there, the season just went downhill. Cam Newton, COVID, injuries came flying in, and the Patriots just losing games that they really shouldn't have lost. I mean, like that Broncos game was so bad, and they had several chances to win. That Bills game, Cam Newton fumbling that ball, they at least could have tied it and sent it to overtime. They barely beat the Jets, barely beat the Ravens. you know, Bad beat in Houston against the Texans. They barely beat the Cardinals. I mean, so many one-score games for this team, and it was just a 50-50 tip-off every time. And unfortunately, the Patriots go 7-9. They missed the playoffs for the first time, and God knows when. I mean, it's been such a long time. But obviously, they faced a real challenge without Tom Brady's. But they're going to have to regroup, and they're going to have to figure out that quarterback situation. They had a ton of opt-outs. I think it was at least 8 players, ton on that defense, and the defense still hung in there. But Kopal, what do you got here with the Patriots? What's your thoughts on their season?
So as a Patriots fan, it's nothing that we like to see, but I mean we're so used to winning with Tom Brady now that I guess all good things come to an end. So I was personally a big fan of the Cam Newton pickup in the offseason. I was obviously, I mean, I bought this jersey week 2, week 3, so I mean I was pumped. I really thought he was going to have a stellar season, a breakout year, like most improved player year. The one thing I thought, though, I mean, you take a look, people kept talking about, oh, Newton and Josh McDaniels, a great combination. Like, you have no idea. It's going to be spectacular. And the only thing that I kept remembering was Josh McDaniels, when he actually head coached Denver, he had Tim Tebow, a quarterback, who was a kind of a scrambler, kind of like Cam Newton. And that didn't work out too well. So I was a little concerned about that. But overall, I thought Cam Newton and Bill Belichick, this is going to be a team that can actually make some noise, because Patriots always have a good defense under Belichick. And then obviously we know about COVID, the opt-outs. Patriots have the most opt-outs out of anybody in the league. They miss guys like Patrick Chung at safety. They Dante Hightower, the inside linebacker that we have. Just a bunch of other guys. We lost a lot of guys. We lost Brady, of course. We lost Van Noy off the edge. We lost a lot of guys all around. Like you said, COVID happened. Cam Newton got COVID. Stephon Gilmore got COVID. Injuries limited. Gilmore got hurt towards the end of the year. A lot of people were banged up. And there's just not a lot to say about the Patriots team this year. The one thing I will say is the Patriots were the 4th best rushing team in the AFC. So they averaged 146.6 rushing yards a game this year. So that's something good to look at. But I mean, when you have Cam Newton and Bill Belichick, he always talks about how running back depth is really important. I mean, we have James White, the receiving back. We have Sonny Michel, who was out for a while this year. Damian Harris comes in. He was a really good back. And then Rex Burkhead, before he got hurt, was a nice feature back in there too. So, I mean, that was really it for the Patriots. I mean, N'Keal Harry, I don't know what's going on. I was pumped to see a breakout year for him. I don't know what to say. He's nothing special. I think a waste of a first round pick, to say the least, to be honest, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
I think Jacoby Myers, I think he's going to be a good receiver, but he's not an elite receiver. I mean, he's good, but he's not elite. You look at all these good teams, you need an elite receiver to actually keep up in the league. The offensive line had a bunch of injuries too, by the way. So, I mean, that didn't help Cam Newton at all. I mean, I know Isaiah Wynn went out with an injury. I think there was a couple games where David Andrews was out. So just guys like that. We had no tight ends. I'm a big fan of Asiasi and Dalton Keene, the 2 guys that got in the draft, but they were out for most of the year with injuries. So, we had Ryan Izzo lining up at the tight end spot, which, I mean, doesn't really help. And the defensive side of the ball, I mean, we just didn't have a defensive line. I mean, Chase Winovich, he's got some potential. We brought in rookies like Josh Uche and Fernie Jennings at linebacker. But, I mean, there's really nothing to brag about on the defensive line. Van Noy, we obviously missed. I mean, there wasn't a lot there. So, in my opinion, I think a lot of the opt-outs was kind of why there was really bad defensive performances from this team. But I think everyone can just tell that this offense is probably one of the worst in the league. There needs to be a change here. I mean, I'm a big fan of Cam Newton, but he just did not play good. Once he got COVID, he started throwing balls on the ground. He was inaccurate. He couldn't even really run like he could. He took a lot of sacks. He got hit a lot. Like I said, that could be because of the offensive line and stuff. But, you know, there's just not a lot to brag about as a Patriots fan. This is the first time in a while we can say that we missed the playoffs. Not only that, but having a losing record. I mean, I think we had a tough schedule, but I mean, that doesn't really matter in the NFL. You got to win, you got to play hard. And I think personally, COVID really hit the Patriots hard. I think Cam Newton was rolling because we had that one score against the Seahawks that we could have won. Then week 3 comes along, we kill the Raiders. And then we have the Chiefs game, which in my opinion, if Cam Newton didn't have COVID and he played, we would have won that game. And that's just my opinion. But I mean, we can't make excuses because then Denver happens and all these games that come along and they're just not good. So I think the only good thing to say is the Patriots had a good rushing offense this year. But other than that, this team was nothing to brag about. If I had to pick an MVP for the Patriots this year, I think I would just say it would have to be JC Jackson. I mean, this guy stepped up big time in the defense, 9 interceptions. I mean, he literally, I have it right here. He was second in the AFC with interceptions with 9. So, I mean, that's a bright
Yeah,
spot.
I 100% agree with you there. I was going to say JC Jackson as well. I mean, like you just pointed out, 9 interceptions. If you look on the offensive side of the ball, having 9 touchdowns in a season is insane. I mean, this guy had a pick pretty much every other game. If you look at it,
Yep.
16 games on the schedule. I mean, if he averaged 8, that would mean that he would get a pick every other game. This guy had 9, second in the NFL. This secondary, I think it's evident that this secondary was the best part of this New England team this season.
Yep.
And, that's not a bad thing. But what you just talked about with that offense, just horrific. And honestly, it was shocking at points during this season. Understanding that we don't have Tom Brady, but the offense is usually what this team can rely on, what Bill Belichick can rely on. Josh McDaniels is usually pretty good at calling plays. And bringing in Cam Newton, I think, Patriots Nation was really excited. And they needed some positive news after losing Tom Brady. And they also, Red Sox fans lost Mookie Betts right before that. So if you're from New England and you like Boston, New England sports, those losses hit pretty hard if you're as big as a sports fan as we are. So bringing in Cam Newton, a guy like we talked about last episode, who's just looks like he's always having a fun time out there and a great guy to have around. I'm sure he's a great guy around the team, on and off the field. It was just disappointing the season that he had, and it's not a guarantee that he's going to be back in New England next year. Of course, he's going to be a free agent. I think the Patriots have already let him know, or he's already let the Patriots know that he's going to test free agency, whatever they've talked about. They've had conversations about it. But JC Jackson, he's going to be my MVP. I thought Damian Harris, like you said, had an excellent season. Obviously, he was battling some injuries, but the one positive I'd say on offense is that, Damian Harris did look good if he can stay healthy. But other than that, I mean, the Patriots passing game, just atrocious. They have a couple of tight ends that they brought in, but during this draft, and we're going to come out with a video on the draft, so that's why we don't want to get too in depth on it.
Yep.
But I will say, not only does this team need to draft a quarterback, I think that's obvious if you know anything about football, no matter what their plan is with Cam Newton and even Jared Stidham. But I think that they definitely need to, find a good receiver because Henry, I mean, that dude has had opportunity after opportunity. He had a chance to play with Tom Brady. Now Cam Newton, I mean, he's just not taking advantage of his opportunities. We saw Demir Bird step up, but that's not a guy that you're going to be like, okay, Demir Bird's going to lead us to the playoffs. And obviously they were without Julian Edelman, so you can't just blame the whole season on the passing game without, your best target and arguably the best player on this team.
Right.
But New England really has to go back to the drawing board this offseason and really figure out the passing situation because offenses are heating up. I just think that they're getting better and better every year.
Especially
Like we
in the
talked
AFC.
about. Yeah, exactly. But yesterday or during last video, we made a point about teams like the Colts, the Browns just stacking their backfield with running backs that at least like Kareem Hunt could be a starter if he was on another team. He is a starter on the Browns, but he would be a guy that could be getting every single carry. Same with Nick Chubb. Hines is a really talented back. Jonathan Taylor. They still have Marlon Mack, who actually got injured, I believe, during training camp. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the offseason with them. But we're going to have, at least one video, maybe a couple, just covering the draft and the offseason for NFL. So stay tuned for that.
Yep.
And on that note, I think we should move to our third AFC team, which is the Miami Dolphins, unless you wanted to make another point.
No, that's it. Patriots.
Okay. So Dolphins, this team was a little bit better. They had 3 more wins than the Patriots, lost in week 1 of the Pats and then returned the favor in week 15 at Hard Rock Stadium. Tua getting the victory there. It was a 10-point game, but I think the Dolphins were just, it was, you could pretty much predict that they were going to win this game. The Patriots offense just not showing up once again. Lost by 6 to the Chiefs. That crazy win. I think their biggest win of the season, probably that game against the Raiders. Obviously, the Bills beat them by 30 the next week. But it gave them another chance at the playoffs and just another Miami miracle. So a great win there against the Raiders in the final seconds and just shows you not to never give up. But this team, 10-6 on the year, so pretty good for them. Obviously better than last year. This Bills team is just too dominant to catch. So, Copa, what do you think here with Miami? What do you got to say about them?
So Miami, I think, if you're a Miami fan, you got a lot to like about the team. You got a lot to love. I think Brian Flores has done a great job coming from New England. We usually see these New England coaches go to different teams. Like take a look at Matt Patricia, Bill O'Brien, guys that just completely ruin franchises. Brian Flores, I think, is doing a really good job as the Miami head coach. He's doing a really good job building around that defense. He signs guys like Van Noy. He brings in Byron Jones from Dallas. He's got a really good secondary. You draft Tua Tagovailoa. You get a great veteran quarterback and Ryan Fitzpatrick to mentor this guy. I think there's a lot to like about this team. You know what I mean? And now you have that, like we said, we'll talk about the draft in a while, but we have that. They had that draft pick from that Laramie Tunsil trade with Houston. So now there's a chance they're in the top 5 of the draft. So I like a lot about this team. The thing is, they didn't pull out, but it was a tough AFC playoff race. So if you're a Dolphins fan, like I said, you got to be happy. So, something I like to talk about. Xavier Howard led the AFC in interceptions. I think the league too, but he had 10 interceptions.
One more than J.C. Jackson, so he was just as good, if not, better. This Miami defense, I think, was really strong and gave the whole team confidence, I think, just by having such a good start to the season. And I think, you made up a great point when you said Fitzpatrick being a good mentor towards Tua. I think Flores has done a good job. Had a good season for this team in his first year, right? First year.
Or I think he coached last year, but
yeah. Still. Okay. Yeah. Second year. One thing that was a little bit concerning is like Ryan Fitzpatrick. He was kind of rolling, and then they just pulled the plug on him all of a sudden. Was it after the 24-0 win against the Jets, or was it earlier?
Yeah, because Tua came in the fourth quarter in that game.
And then he played the Rams in his first game.
Yeah, so Ryan Fitzpatrick talked about how heartbreaking it was for him, but I like what Flores did because we saw in the Vegas game. He came in when they needed it. So this is great leadership by Fitzpatrick, but it's great mentorship for Tua. You know what I mean? Like he can look up at this guy, and this guy's a good quarterback. He's not a backup quarterback. Like he could start. Think about him on the Patriots. He could have done some damage in my opinion, but he's a good quarterback. The run game was good. Myles Gaskin had a breakout year. He was a really good bright spot.
He's another one of those just gems that you had no idea. But,
you know what I mean? They signed Kyle Van Noy as well in the offseason on the defensive side of the ball. So, and let me give you a couple stats. So I gave you Xavier Howard, right? Now I'll give you another defensive stat for Miami. They were tied in 3rd in the league in turnover differential with 9. So they're +9. So their defense was getting turnovers, giving their offense the ball. So one thing, if you're a Dolphins fan, that defense is looking nice. And Brian Flores, he was a safeties coach and the defensive coordinator in New England, so he's got a lot of defensive mindset things going on. And that's really all I have to say about the Dolphins. I'll just tell you my MVP. I think my MVP of the Dolphins this year would probably be Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think that he is the reason that they actually like moved and or like basically trended upward. And like we said, people were like, "Why is he getting pulled now? We're rolling in a division with the Patriots, who at the time were still considered a threat." And then Josh Allen and the Bills. So I think that Ryan Fitzpatrick, you're going to give him a lot of credit for what he did. And then that Oakland or the Vegas game where he comes in, actually like saves the game for them, gives them a shot at the playoffs, knocks Gruden and the Raiders out. So I think,
So let me ask you a question just while you're on that thought with Fitzpatrick. So, this Dolphins team is 3-3 when they pull them, and I mean, not a great record, but their losses, I mean, they're coming against, the Patriots in week one, whatever. It's week one, you
yep,
know, new team. And then they lose to the Bills by 3 points in week two. So 0-2, get the win in Jacksonville, and then lose by 8 to the Seahawks in week four. So I mean, two out of those three teams, like obviously they're playoff teams, but I mean those just right on paper, are good teams. And I mean,
yep,
both teams put up 31 points. The Dolphins knew they were going to have a good defense coming into this season, like you talked about, bringing over those free agent accusations. But do you think that this team, and now they probably would need only one more win, and right now they'd be playing for a wild card
right.
in the wild card
Mm-hmm.
weekend, whatever. Do you think that if they had started Ryan Fitzpatrick, um, they would be, they would have that one more win, or do you think they'd be worse or just the same?
I don't know because I'm still not sure what the team's goal was because the question was, you're rolling. Why are you pulling him for Tua? But then again, you're trying to develop this kid. He is a top 5 draft pick. You want him to be a top quarterback in the league, and I think he can be that. But another thing is you got to remember Tua was injured when he got drafted, so he didn't really have a training camp. He was coming off that injury, rehabbing. So do I think it was a good idea to pull Fitzpatrick? In one way, yes. In another way, no. I think if they kept Fitzpatrick again, I think this team would have 11 wins. I just do. I think they might have 11 on the
Yeah.
number, but that's nothing to take away from Tua. I think this is just a situational thing. I think that, Brian Flores, you can't question him. He's a head coach in the NFL, and he's proven that he's decent. I think he's good. He's 10 and
He
6,
worked under Bill Belichick too, so that's
and he's coming
obviously
away and actually
not
doing
something to
good.
be ashamed of.
So I think that I think they'd have 11 wins. I think they'd be in a wild card spot right now if they played Fitzpatrick. But like I said, I think he's the MVP of the team this year. I think that he really showed that he can do something.
Because
So
I'm just looking at like some of these close losses, and I mean they're losing, to the Broncos by 7 in a game that they probably should have won. It was in Denver, but I mean this team ultimately missed the playoffs, just came up short by one win. I mean, if they, get that win in Denver, I mean they're probably in the playoffs. They lost to the Chiefs, which obviously you can't really be ashamed of losing the Chiefs, but I mean that one just slipped right off their fingertips, lost by 6.
yep,
Um, and then Ryan Fitzpatrick actually was the one that, drove them down the field in the last, whatever, 30 seconds, if even, of that game against Vegas. So, I mean, he just steps right into the game, throws a bomb downfield, and Sanders, who's been, pretty much automatic this season, he's been really good for them. Um, so obviously, the Dolphins just stunned, and just no chance against the Bills in week 17 here, losing by 30. I mean, the Bills defense outscored them, I'm pretty sure. So insane for them. But for my MVP for this team, I'm probably just going to go with Tua. I think, I know he's grateful for the opportunity, especially because Fitzpatrick wasn't playing necessarily bad. But like you said, he was injured coming in, and I know, he's a very high draft pick coming out of Alabama. I mean, you're bound to be good if you come out of Alabama. He gets a pretty good rookie season. I mean, he almost leads this team to a playoff berth. but stepping in mid-season, I mean, his first game against the Rams, and that game was actually, I think it could have been 24, maybe it was even 28 nothing at a point. I don't know, but that game was a blowout against the Rams, and then the Rams tried to mount a comeback. They couldn't, but Tua getting his first win in that game. So, I mean, that's a pretty challenging team, especially, in your first NFL game. I mean, it would have been nice if he could have came out against like Jacksonville or something, but, Flores goes right ahead, pulls Fitzpatrick for a reason that we don't know why. Tua gets this big win, and then he gets, a big win against the Cardinals. I think this team has a lot to look forward to. They did face some injuries on the defensive side of the ball. I love Myles Gaskin coming in. He's looked really strong. Not only, is he a speedster that can run the ball, but he is, great out of the backfield as a pass catching back. And I think that is something that is huge in this game, just having a running back that can run and catch passes like he does. So Miami, I mean, you may have gotten snubbed this year, but next year, it's probably going to be another strong season for this team. And I could definitely see them getting more than 10 wins. So we'll have to see. It's going to be another interesting year for the AFC East, I think, next season.
Definitely, I'd agree.
Okay, so with our last team of the AFC East, we have the Buffalo Bills. If you've been following the NFL this season, well, they dominated this AFC East, and I think it's fair to say that this Buffalo Bills team, regardless with what happens in the playoffs, I mean, this team just had such a good season, and I think they were easily one of the most dominant teams of the regular season. 13-3 record. Like we said, first in the AFC East. I mean, this team just fell short of the 14-2 Chiefs. So they do have the second seed. They're going to be taking on the Colts, as we talked about in our first podcast. But let's hop right into this recap here. So, Copel, start us off here with the Buffalo Bills.
So yeah, guys, you already know Buffalo, top team in the AFC East this season. First time since I believe the '90s that they won the division title. Obviously, Patriots took that throne with Belichick and Brady every season. But listen, we got to give a lot of credit to this Buffalo team. Sean McDermott, he's done a great job at that head coach position. Like I talked about yesterday, this team had a really good defense last season. Offense was still struggling. You bring in Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen becomes accurate as crazy, and he's still in the football great, and he's in the MVP conversation for me. So I mean, this team is really good. You bring in Zach Moss at running back. People are like, you have Devin Singletary. What are you doing? Well, you know that in the NFL, you need running back depth, and he's come along greatly. So now you have a nice duel in the backfield there. There's just a lot of good to talk about with this team. In my opinion, they earned that number 2 seed, and I believe, and they easily deserve the AFC East title. There's a lot to talk about with this team, but let me just give you some stats from the Buffalo team. So Josh Allen was 5th in the league in passing yards with 4,644. People said he could run. We knew he had a cannon, but he's accurate as heck now. So there's that. Another thing, Stephon Diggs, number 1 in receiving yards this season. So 1,535 is what he finished with. So great numbers there. I mean, look at you bring in the guy from Minnesota, you give Josh Allen the number 1 target, and boy, oh boy, does he make a statement. Not only that, but he opens up the gate for John Brown, Cole Beasley, Mackenzie Davis, all these guys on the offense. So great move by Buffalo to bring in Stephon Diggs from Minnesota. We can tell the impact that he has had on this team, and I think it was a great one. And this team's going to be a top contender for a while. Going down the list, as a team now, passing yards, the Bills are 3rd in the league, averaging 288.8 passing yards a game in the regular season. Rushing yards, middle of the pack, so they weren't terrible rushing. They were decent. And I mean, this team, they had a pretty solid defense. So if you ask me, I mean, number 2 in total yards in the league with 396.4 games. So that's rushing and passing. Then you have a top 5 passing yards a game in the league. So your offense is a powerhouse. Like I said yesterday, you're doing a lot right over there in Buffalo. McDermott and his coordinator is doing a great job. The defense is really good. I think it's in a good spot going in the playoffs, the number 2 seed. I think that you can easily book this as a success for Bills fans as for this year. I'm telling you right now, this is a start to something big there in Buffalo, and you got to be happy about what's going on. If I had to say my MVP for this team, I think without a doubt it's Josh Allen. He has been insane. You can make the case it's Diggs, but with what Josh Allen has done, he's improved on so much. He's so accurate now. He doesn't run all the time, so when he doesn't have a pass he can run, he's just so lethal in every aspect, and he's the reason this team is winning their division. Not only that, but being the number 2 seed right behind the Chiefs. I think that he's the MVP of the team, and what a season by Buffalo.
Yeah, I'd absolutely have to agree with pretty much everything that you said there. I mean, we know how good their offense is when you've got Josh Allen just throwing cannons to Stephon Diggs. But let's, give a little love to this defense too. I don't think anyone was expecting this defense to be as good as they were. I know there was a couple of hidden gems in there. I mean, Josh Norman is on this team, and he was the guy that nobody I don't even remember the last time I heard his name called. I believe he's on this team, correct?
Yeah, Josh Norman's on the team.
I think he was injured though, right? I
I
don't
think he
even
might have
know.
been, but he's really their
Veteran presence
their
guy on the defensive
slot
side.
cornerback, their nickel guy, because they have Wallace and they have
Yeah.
Tre'Davious White obviously on the
But
outside. So.
also on this defense, you've got Tre'Davious White, Tremaine Edmonds, Jordan Poyer. The list goes on. Micah Hyde. I mean,
Milano.
Ed Oliver on that D line too. Levi Wallace. I mean, just all over the place. This defense is stacked. There is literally no gaps on this defense. This team can get to the quarterback. This team can drop back, play zone. These cornerbacks can play with pretty much any receiver in the NFL, I would say. Maybe that could be a little bit of a stretch, but this team is just such a strong team, on both sides of the ball. And I really think that, you talk about Super Bowl, and this team just has to be in the picture. Like you said, with Josh Allen, as a personal thing for him, MVP, that's definitely something that could happen. I'd say my pick for MVP would probably have to be Aaron Rodgers. I've been saying it all season, but I think Josh Allen has had an MVP like season, and he's been really helping out. Cole Beasley and Stephon Diggs making a case for them. And Singletary hasn't been, that running back that just grounds and pounds, getting a certain amount of carries every game. He's not like a Nick Chubb or when we saw Akers against the Patriots, and that's just because that's not this team's identity on offense. I mean, every single team in the league knows that this is a pass-first team. The Bills know that, and that's the way that they play. And you know what? It works. So continue to do it. And you've got Devin Singletary, you've got that rookie Zach Moss, and they look like pretty solid. One thing I think that this offense could work on is maybe getting a little bit more of a run game, but really there's just no holes. There's nothing really you could complain about from this team. And I'm going to jump that ship with you and say Josh Allen, he's going to be my MVP of this team of the season. Stephon Diggs, extremely important pickup, and this team may not have been there without Stephon Diggs. But I'll tell you, if this team didn't have Josh Allen, they definitely wouldn't be the number 2 seed. And, maybe they got a little lucky with New England just having the type of year that they did, in Miami getting slowed down a little bit. But Josh Allen, I mean, this kid just looks like he's getting better every game. He's put the work in. He's completely changed his throwing motion. You just see him, and it looks so easy what he's doing just because he makes it look so good, throwing touchdowns. But I love this team, and as much as I hate them because I'm a Patriots fan. I'd love to see this team, put in some work in the playoffs, and I think they will. So, Copel, any last thoughts on the Bills, the AFC East?
No, I mean, like you covered a lot of good points. Bills have just been, like I said yesterday, and I'll say it again, powerhouse on offense, and their defense is great. I think that this is a great all-around team. You're going to see them go far in the playoffs. How far, I'm not sure. I'd like to say that they might go to the Super Bowl, but we'll have to see. But yeah, this team's no joke. This is definitely a successful season for them, going what 13-3. I mean,
Correct.
this is a team that, listen, they earned the way their record. They played great. They did everything they needed to do. And to be honest with you, until the Patriots and even the Dolphins figure it out a little more, this team, you can lock this team up for the AFC East for a couple of years unless something happens with the Dolphins and the Patriots, which could happen. But I mean, this team is playing lights out right now. So I think we covered everything. I think that, AFC East, I don't
I
know. I
think it
mean,
just goes, and I just want to add one more point. I mean, we get the Bills' offense was so good this year, but if you look at their last couple of games, and they already had a playoff spot, I'd say before these games. Obviously, you're trying to get the highest seed you can. I think that Steelers victory or that victory at home over the Steelers in Week 14 was I'm not sure. Was that a Monday night game or
it
I
was
think it
Sunday
was
night.
Sunday night football. Okay. So not only was that a huge win for them, but then they just go to Denver and just dismantled the Broncos. I mean, we talked about it, the pick six for Jerry Hughes. Just they roll over them 48 points, 38 points in New England. Now, Broncos, Patriots, not two great teams this season, but this team is they just keep going. It's like a motor. There's not a game where their offense, you know, just takes a game off or their defense. I mean, they're only giving up 9 points to a struggling Patriots offense, but 9 points is not a whole lot of points for 4 quarters. And they come into Foxborough, which, a lot of people will say it's a tough spot to play no matter who is on that other sideline. They put up 38 points on Monday Night Football. And then a game that many people, I mean, they didn't even have to start anyone. Their playoff implications, I don't believe their seed was going to change at all. The Steelers didn't even start anyone. They didn't start Big Ben. They lost to Cleveland, so they gave the Browns a gift. But the Bills, no, that is not them. What are they going to do? They're going to play Josh Allen, and they're going to put up 56 points against the Miami Dolphins. Knock them out of the playoffs. And the Dolphins, I mean, this wasn't a bad team. I know the Bills were clicking. I mean, the Dolphins still put up 26 points, but like 56 points, that's like college football territory. And this Dolphins defense, we just talked about it. They do have a strong defense, especially in that secondary. So this Bills team, I think, can hang with anyone. And like you said, this team is going to be dominant for the next couple of years as long as they have number 17 on their team and Stephon Diggs. They're just looking like a completely scary duo, those two in Buffalo. So on that note, I think we are going to wrap this one up. So this was the AFC East, a little recap. We're going to have a recap of the rest of the divisions. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and share. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.